Um, since there's already enough confusion about what a smart city is out there, so I thought we would add to it by asking what is a smart way to build a smart city? And this is sort of important because even after we agree on what the cities need, there still remains the question of how is it going to be built, who's going to build them, and most importantly, the question of will we build our smart cities only if there's money to be made in doing so? What if there's no money to be made in building a smart city? Should we still build smart cities? And these are important questions because fundamentally the answers to these questions will shape a lot of things, not only in our country, but around the world as well. Okay, let me see if I can get this going. There's some other things on the screen that okay, there's something else over there. Okay. Now, one of the things that you would have realized over the last few years, if you look at projects around the world, you'll see projects in different parts of the world, in Barcelona, in Rio de Janeiro, in Chicago, in Sydney, and various other places. And it seems almost like we're trying to build a smart city idea around the world one by one. And that itself is not very smart. If you build at this sort of speed of creating smart cities around the world, it'll take you roughly about 200 years to finish building these kinds of things, at which point it may not be necessary to build smart cities anymore. You have to come up with a model that can rapidly scale the thing to every city on the planet, not simply about doing the pilots or the solutions in the particular cities that are willing to get on board now. So what exactly is a smart city? Everybody sort of has different answers to this question. But one thing that I found consistently when talking to people about this is that all of the answers include one bit consistently. A smart city is something in which the government is smart, the people are also better informed and smart, and businesses are able to leverage a technology platform and intelligence and information to make their own solutions smart as well. That is, all three of these things have to somehow coexist together in order to create a smart city. This is a uniform part of the answer, no matter where you ask this question and no matter in which forum you have this discussion. Which is kind of interesting, because if you look at any of the solutions that people talk about when they talk about smart cities, invariably the solutions talk about only one of these things. Either they are selling to government, or they are trying to create a business-enabled platform that consumers can use, or they're making a public information platform that's useful as a social network to a lot of people, but is neither in the business space nor in the government technology space. How is it possible that if a smart city requires A and B and C, that we think we can achieve it by building A alone, or B alone, or C alone? This is one question to be addressed. And in this, there's this question of who does what, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of reluctance and confusion around this question. And that is because there's a reluctance and confusion that comes from the nature of democracy itself in most of our cities. The original assumption is that democracy is for the people, of the people, and also by the people. But nowadays, most people believe that this by the people part must be referring to their neighbor and not to them. And therefore, if there's anything that they should do, this should be outsourced to somebody else. Sarkar should do about 90% of the work. Businesses should do about 20% of the work. And they should do minus 10% of the work. And that's how it sort of adds up to 100%. This model simply will not scale at all. If you don't have an idea of the smart city in which you are not part of building that smart city, I guarantee your city is not going to be smart. How on earth can you live in a smart city if it is discounting you to begin with? So in a way, you have to ask yourself, what is my contribution to being in this smart city, and what are the things that I can do? So understanding who does what is important. And in this, there's a certain other thing as well. You have to be comfortable with the idea that a single person or a single institution can do more than one thing. That is, you can't have a silo in which Sarkar does only Sarkari things, in which you do only business things, and citizens do only activist things. If you do that, you'll not get the smart city. You have to build a smart city in a way that you're comfortable with the idea that these boundaries that we have created between government and civil society and industry, these are actually detrimental to the goal of building intelligent cities. And we have to get away from that as much as possible. So this is sort of how I illustrate it in most places. It's not simply about thinking outside the box. You have to think about the box itself a little bit differently. Because if you just think outside the box, you may find yourself outside and the box kind of carries on by itself. In a way, this is the model that we now have to come up with. And then comes the question of scale. Everybody says, look, I've hit upon this idea, and it works in my neighborhood, it works in my city, it works elsewhere, but how on earth am I going to get it to work in 20,000 cities around the planet? How can we make this thing a replicable model that is useful not just in the context of what I know and the interventions that I'm part of, but is actually useful anywhere in the world for any reason, to be used by any community, any business, any city government. And most importantly, scale comes with the problem of time. How can you build a smart city solution or an approach to smart cities that is useful and usable in any city tomorrow morning? Not 3 years from now, 5 years from now, once your technology stack is ready or once everything is in place. Can we build something that cities can begin to use tomorrow morning? Because if you build something that cities can begin to use, they will continue on the trajectory of using more and more technology for higher and higher intelligence. I remember when we first built this very crude traffic management center at Ashok Nagar police station. Before we built this giant one at Infantry Road, we built this traffic management center at Ashok Nagar police station. It was just the top floor of the police station. We cobbled together a bunch of desks, put up some screens, gathered instrumentation and data feeds from around the city, and put it up on a wall, and had some 20 policemen looking at it. It was entirely a cobbled together kind of thing. But because they had that first generation thing, they were able to imagine the second generation thing. And then they built the room that they built at Infantry Road. Maybe there's a picture of it over here. And if you look at the control room in Infantry Road, you'll realize that it's as good as any other control center anywhere else in the world. If you've been to the ones in Singapore or in London, like I have, you'll realize that from a facilities point of view, it's as good as anything else anywhere else in the world. And there's something even more remarkable about Bangalore Traffic Control Center. It was built by the police. Think about it. Our average perception of government department is these guys can't do anything. If anything needs to be done, it has to be outsourced. Surely they cannot do technology. How is it possible then that a police force of all things is able to build a state-of-the-art technology center without an external contract? We have to be able to ask and answer these kinds of difficult questions to bring capacity to government as well. An important part of the smart city solutions that you have in mind has to build capacity in public administration. If you go on building capacity in private sector and leave the public administration behind, there is absolutely no way in the world that you can get a smart city out of that. So this is the approach that I work with. I call it government by the people, and I don't use it in a loose way. I use it in a very specific way. You're going to get development and intelligence in how we manage our societies, not only by sort of thinking about solutions. It's not about what the product can do, it's not about what the device can do or the technology can do, or even what individuals can do. The number one goal that we have to pursue is to increase the number of problem-solving people. If you increase the number of problem-solving people, the solutions begin to multiply. So we have to ask ourselves, is our solution fundamentally geared towards increasing the number of problem-solving people, or does it rely on the intelligence of one organization to intervene in a very specific way and deliver outcomes? Because solutions that derive from the intelligence of one organization are simply not going to scale. You have to have that same organization or similar organizations being present in thousands of cities for those things to scale. The government of India has identified 98 cities or 99 cities for its smart cities mission. There are at least 600 of those cities that will need those interventions. Our mission is to get to these 98 cities in 4 or 5 years. To get to 600 of them will take you 25 years to 35 years, even at the current pace, by which time the problems will be even bigger. You really have to do this in a way that imagines every city and lots of people in every city. What are the deficits in city? Let's look at that. Silos in public administration. Every government department sort of prefers to work in its own silo and sometimes even refuses to work with another government department. It's not just that they don't, they'll actively tell you, sir, we don't want to work with these guys. I used to do these coordination meetings between Bangalore civic agencies in South Bangalore for a couple of years. And when the BESCOM guys and the BBMP guys and the BWSSB guys would come together, they would say, sir, ನಾನು ಇವರಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ನೋಡಿಲ್ಲ. That I have never met this man outside of this meeting. How is it possible that your counterpart in another civic agency responsible for the same geography, and you are telling me that you have never met the guy? So this is the reality out there. Talent and training deficits in department. I mean, it's one of those realities today that we're not giving sufficient attention to manpower and competence in government, and people are sort of pushed up through ranks of service without being given the necessary skills to work with them. There's weak planning and implementation. We don't have to tell you about this thing. I mean, BDA is legendary. At some level, there's only one thing I always say about BDA: it should be closed, and that will improve planning overnight. So we have reached the stage where planning in government is so weak that some department agencies are more useful if they don't exist than if they exist. This is the reality. Lack of funds. Everybody says there's no money. There's no money for this, there's no money for that. By the time you finish paying for the things that you're already committed to, there's no money. And expecting government alone to solve problems. This is a very huge part of the problem. We think that the problems are going to be solved. We saw all these, the last week and a half, many of you have been watching these flood relief efforts in Chennai. Government is the problem. Is not part of the solution, it is the problem. Everybody on the ground is saying, if only these people would get out of the way. It takes time to put Amma stickers on all of these packets. And that's the reality. I mean, it's not just me saying it, right? So it's out there. You have to deal with the reality that government is not always part of the solution. Government is often part of the problem. But that's not to say that everything in government is bad. But you have to create a system in which there is parity between government and citizens and businesses and all of that stuff. A hierarchical system in which government enjoys special privileges is one of the reasons we're not able to move forward, because every decision seems dependent on the government. Similarity of problems in all cities. We are always trying to solve the problem in one geography, but the problem is everywhere in every city in a scale that we can't even begin to imagine. Even governments that are willing, and there are some governments that are genuinely willing to do the right thing here and there, they are confronted by the enormity of the problem, and they'll go and say, man, isme haath lagana to mar jayenge. Right? They are basically saying, you go down this road, you're going to die. Much better to not go down the road and be criticized for not doing anything than for doing the wrong thing. There's all kinds of fear out there about doing anything. But that also tells you what the solutions are. Integrate the department silos. Build internal capacity in government through technology. These are all things we can do. Build collaborative approaches to solutions in which not one person or one type of entity alone is responsible for doing the right thing. Build for every city, build for every domain. This is extremely important. If you come and tell me that you are working on a smart city project in such and such city, by and large, I will be happy to assure you that it is unlikely to succeed as a smart city solution. Because ultimately, the solution has to be deployable in every city. And therefore, alongside your pilot, you need a strategy for saying how is this going to emerge simultaneously in many more cities so that I don't become dependent on the success of one pilot. I have multiple opportunities to make this thing succeed in scale. So this is the sort of thing that we've been working on. So at MapUnity, we're building the urban social network. We call it an urban social network. And we call this an urban social network deliberately for a reason. Because we really see this as a social network. Government is a kind of social network. There are things that you do in your own neighborhood, in your own community. There are things that you do with elected representatives at a local level. There are things that you do with higher levels of representatives in parliaments and assemblies. And there are things that businesses do. There are things that citizens do out of their own good intentions. All of this together is what creates the society and the solutions that we are looking for. If we don't imagine the possibility from this starting point, we're always going to end up with a small subset. Right now, the platform that we are building, we're hosting it for 97 or 98 cities around the world. Instancing it for each city is literally about 20 seconds of work. All we are really trying to do now is to find people in different parts of the world who are willing to work with us in deploying these platforms in their cities. And whenever we find a place where people are willing to work with us, we turn the platform on for their city. And what does it comprise? Some years ago, we built the Bangalore Transport Information System. Many of you know about BTIS and the work that I've done with BTIS. What did BTIS do? It took the traffic department, the metro, the bus company, the BBMP's projects on road infrastructure, the transport department's forms of obtaining license and various sorts of things. Every single thing connected to mobility, not only in government, but also in the private sector. All the carpooling services, all the taxi services, all the applications, and put the whole thing together into a single integrated platform. This is what the consumer wants. What the citizen wants is a single place in which he or she can see all the things that are related to mobility in the city and to be able to make solutions based on that integrated body of knowledge. Now, unfortunately, it's nobody's job to do that. The transport department does its job, the traffic police do their job, and so on and so forth. And the irony of this problem is that even if every single department did its job really well, there would still be the problem of integration, because it is not anybody's job to do integration. And the mayors of cities sometimes can take up this responsibility, but our mayors are like passing clouds, and it's kind of difficult for them to take any responsibility before they get dislodged from their office. And so in a way, that's also not available to us. So what do? Any responsibility that is not already given to government belongs to the citizens. This is the very idea of democracy. We often behave as though government created the citizens. But actually, citizens created the government in 1947. There wasn't a government of India. There were citizens of India before there was a government of India. And what did they do? They structured the government in a certain way. They created the government of India. They created the states. They created the district collectorates. They created the panchayati raj. They created the urban local bodies. All of these things were created subsequent to the existence of citizens. So therefore, if you have not created a certain kind of government that is needed for you, integration. If you say integration is a kind of governance function that is needed, and it has not been created already, it automatically follows that this is the responsibility of the citizens themselves. So all we did is to say, let's do this ourselves. And we made only one small difference to it tactically. We didn't call it MapUnity. We called it Bangalore Transport Information System. If you get Bangalore Transport Information System instead of MapUnity, it acquires certain values which make it useful. It has the appearance of being the default system for the city. It has the appearance of doing well on search engines. It has it has certain advantages that bring more and more people to work with you. And because we built the Bangalore Transport Information System, I'm not going to talk about the bus reforms much over here, but it's because we built BTIS that BMTC began working with MapUnity, and we built the Big 10 fleet here. So it's possible that technology can not only address the problems it confronts directly, it can also deal with unrelated, non-technology solutions, because those who work on the technology problems now have credibility in the system. Many of our companies in the IT sector, I'm sorry to say this, many of our companies in the IT sector are not sufficiently engaged with governance in the city. They have extraordinary competence in their companies. If that competence was available to the governance domains, it would be so much easier to make things work well in the city. So now what we're saying is, so first we built the Bangalore Transport Information System. Then we started building the Bangalore Environment Portal, looking at lakes primarily, but at water supply, water quality, groundwater. We have a phenomenon in this city. About half the city depends on groundwater through bore wells. Nobody knows how much water is there underground. It's almost like you're pumping all this water on a daily basis without knowing how much water is there underground. So we built a groundwater mapping platform to be able to see what is the shape of the aquifer below the city, how many layers of water are there, what's the rate at which this water level is changing and not changing. And the beauty of doing this sort of thing is there's no reason why it cannot also be done in Delhi, also be done in Chennai, also be done in Brisbane and Chicago and 20 other cities with the exact same platform. The only thing that changes from one city to another is the data. The geographic location and the data pertinent to that thing changes from location to location. So every time you build a tool, you don't build it for Bangalore, you build it for every city. Then we're starting to build this thing called Safe Bangalore. It actually came out of some stuff that I did with the CID department some years ago. One of the interesting problems, I'll tell you a little joke to relieve the monotony of the technology for a while. The CID department had a peculiar thing. Once when I was traveling with the chief minister in Shimoga, one of the superintendents of police showed me a list of people that they were trying to catch. So I said, okay, all these people are okay, but here's one guy who is not in Karnataka, he's in Warangal. How are you going to catch him? He said, we have a system for that. From Shimoga, I'll send a letter request to Bangalore to say, there's one guy in Warangal, we need to catch him, please do something. So the guys in Bangalore will send a letter to Hyderabad saying, there's one guy, my fellow one's in Shimoga. He apparently is in Andhra Pradesh at that time. I think Warangal may be still in Andhra Pradesh. Try to catch him and get him back to us. And the headquarters in Hyderabad will send a letter to Warangal SP saying, here is one joker that we are trying to catch in Shimoga. Please catch him and hand him over. By that time, that fellow will move from Warangal to Shimoga. The guy you are trying to send. Many of you know this also. You remember Veerappan? Tamil Nadu police will come, he'll go to Kerala. Kerala police will come, he'll go to Tamil Nadu. This is what he did for years together. So what I said is, I asked the superintendent, don't you know that Warangal is in Andhra Pradesh? He said, I know that, sir, but I'm beginning to wonder whether my superiors know that. Right? Because this is the system that they have put in place for that. So what we did, a few of us, we built a simple system that took all the police major SP headquarters in this country and said, these are the states in which these are located. Whenever you have a request to catch one of these jokers from one of those jurisdictions, you send the request directly to that station or that SP without running it through your respective headquarters. 2 days, and this was done on my home computer for a while, just tinkering around with one of my friends. And 2 days later, without even my knowledge, the Home Minister of India at that time, Mr. Chidambaram, announced it as the Interstate Coordination Network of CIDs for South India. The reason, even then I forgot about it. 3 years later, one policeman in Kerala called me up and said, sir, your platform is not working. So I said, what is this platform that you're talking about? That CID network that you built is not working. And I realized I had let the domain name expire. Because I wasn't doing it. And there's a phenomenal lesson in this. The need for external intervention to strengthen capacity in government is phenomenal. But the opportunity is equally phenomenal. If you get involved, you can do extraordinary things. I always tell people, I'm an astronomer. I used to study Antarctic clouds. Until 7 years ago, I had never looked at even a single thing in urban development. All the stuff that I've done in the last 7 or 8 years, I've done because simply I got involved, looked at the system, said, what can we do? And that must mean, if somebody with no background like me can do so many things, it must mean that many of you with extraordinary backgrounds that are ideal for doing this thing can do a lot more. Then we built the Bangalore Heritage Platform. This is an interesting tool too. It's basically a combination, shows all the map locations, all local cuisine, local arts and crafts, local places of interest, not just buildings, but the entire local architecture, all sorts of things that are locally relevant as history. I always tell that in India, we know only the 6-step history of India, which is taught in all our schools. African caveman, Indus Valley civilization, Mughals, British, Indira Gandhi, me. So this is the order in which they teach history and everything. Most people think history came through the Northwest. That they don't have an idea. If you go to them in Gulbarga, or if you go to like Cochin and say, what is the local history of Cochin? They can't tell you a local history of Cochin that is not based on this all-India narrative. So we built this platform simply for that reason. And now we're trying to build digital museums of local history in different parts of the country. Then we did something called industry cluster analysis. Many of you have been to our global investors meet. I mean, if you really want to have entertainment, you should go to a gym. There's really nothing much happens there. People who have looted money from you will invest it back in your own state and call it investment. This has been happening all over the country, not just in Karnataka. But you can do something else. Once I remember when Mr. Gowda was chief minister, Sadanand Gowda was chief minister, he said, we should somehow bring investment to smaller cities. I said, we ourselves don't know what is good in those smaller cities. How can we convince any investor to invest in them? So we built this industry cluster platform to be able to say, for every region of Karnataka, for every city in Karnataka, what is that region already good at? And can we then go to the international community, the investor community in India itself and everyone else to say, you invest in this. So basically, this is what I'm trying to drive at. There's one platform. You have to build one platform, but it has to have 3 uses. It has to provide information to the public. Because it's very important. This is the thing that makes it visible, noticeable, repeatable, all of that stuff. It has to provide visible information to the public. It has to be usable as an administration platform by government. This is very important. If the police commissioner, like in Mumbai, for example, we've been working with the Mumbai Traffic Police to build a few things. They've got all kinds of requirements. One of their requirements is, well, we have to do all these no objection certificate for new development plans that are sanctioned by MMRDA. We don't have a digital way of looking at it on a map, looking at traffic conditions over there, and responding to it. Can you build one? And the answer we give is, no, we can't build this for you, but we can build it into our platform in a way that when it is available to Mumbai Traffic Police, it is also available to Bangalore Traffic Police and Calcutta Traffic Police and Chicago Police and everybody simultaneously. How do you build platforms that are available as administration tools as well? Solutions for businesses. This is one of those ironies of the marketplace. BMTC has vehicle tracking capability for its buses using GPS units. All of our Ola guys and other companies, they have vehicle tracking capability for their services using GPS as well. Some of the school buses also have that. Various logistics delivery vehicles have that. But what we don't have is a single technology platform or even multiple technology platforms that can be used by all of them simultaneously. We're always trying to build for the silo. We're trying to build for this business user, for that government user, for this public interest user, for this school, and so on and so forth. And that doesn't add up. You have to create a platform that is useful as an ambulance tracking service, is useful as a school bus tracking service, useful just to find your friend in the neighborhood, and useful simply as a tracking and technology tool, and is then deployed in many ways differently. One of the things we're doing now in BMTC, it's an interesting project, saying the passenger information system that they've been talking about, where is my bus and when will it come? It should be able to run out of the driver's mobile phone. If the driver gets on the bus and says, I'm driving bus number 5, you should be able to tell afterward when this bus number 5 will come to each of the bus stops. It's only a matter of knowing the route of bus number 5, knowing the speed of the vehicle, and something about road conditions. All of that information is available to us. Can we create a system that does not depend on GPS devices, but depends only on the mobile phone? And this is especially important in government. Government is usually the last person to buy any good technology. Usually first a very good thing will happen, they'll not even know about it. Then millions of citizens will start to use it, and some officials in government themselves will personally start to use it, at which point they'll start thinking, maybe we should use it in our department also. And one tender bidding process, all of those things will start. By the time it completes, that company that created that technology will be ready to go obsolete. This is roughly how it works. And GPS is a great example of this. The whole world is migrated away from GPS. BMTC is now preparing to add GPS to all their 6,000 buses. And this has a governance issue as well. The guy who is left in the GPS market, he's not the world's greatest GPS vendor. He's the world's least capable GPS vendor. That's why he's the last guy standing in the market. And you are his only customer. I mean, this is dynamite. You take a guy who should have exited the market, and you buy the product from him, knowing fully well that you are the only customer. It is guaranteed to fail. The last 2 GPS vendors that BMTC signed on, both went bankrupt. Right? It's very predictable. And one poor fellow was told, we'll not give you money, we'll give you advertising space on the bus. And then the chief minister came along and said, people of Bangalore don't know me enough, put my picture in all these advertising spaces. But between these two, the company went bankrupt. What are we doing in Electronic City? The Electronic City project, I think Ishwar or somebody might talk more about this thing, is basically this idea of bring it all together. Bring everything together. Bring public information, multiple domains, all these things together in a way that they are visible to the public through a coherent platform, expose the data through APIs, let people write solutions on top of it. If you've got a device that you think is useful to the smart cities market, you must have a platform through which that device is exposable in every corner of the world today. That's somebody else's responsibility. It can't be the device maker's responsibility to go and discover that capability. Can we build that? This is what we're building, this thing we call MapUnity in the global context and Technagra within the India context, the smart cities platform. From the government side with the public. That is, it is both for the government, with the public, but it's also open to multiple devices and applications, and it is social and commercial and administrative. This is the most important thing about the smart cities thing. If you remember only one thing from all the stuff that I said, I would encourage you to remember thing. If your solution is not simultaneously social, commercial, and administrative, it's not going to fly. Because it can take along only one of the 3 pieces that need to become smart. Because the smart city involves citizens, government, and businesses, the smart city solution also has to involve government, citizens, and businesses. And I just want to take you back to this one map. Like I said, there are 70 cities in which we're doing this in India. We're doing this in 4 in Southern Africa, 7 in North America. This turning on this capability for more and more cities is literally half a minute's work. After that, it's inviting the respective data sources in each of those cities, surfacing them, and creating the solution that more and more people can begin to work with. And I'll leave you with this last thought. Fundamentally, the smart city, real intelligence in a democracy is not about the solution. Real intelligence in a democracy is about increasing the number of problem-solving people and trusting them to be part of the solution. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to take questions, comments, anything. Sir? Please. I don't see any mic, so you might as well go ahead. Please, you go ahead. If there's a mic, you bring it to you. Yeah. It's on.
I'd seen that some of the bigger companies in India, traditionally known for working on government projects, told a lot of problems in terms of getting into the project, tracking the milestones, getting their payment out. And many people, in fact, I read some of the annual reports, and they actually tell that in the annual report and then announcing that they're reducing the exposure to government projects. Yeah. I think when you are working, how did you see that? Is it more like non-commercial and on your own you did that? And how was your experience, and do you have any suggestions for changing that scenario?
Well, three things I would say about working with the government. It is true that a lot of people say it's difficult to work with government, they don't listen to anything that we say, and all of that stuff. But by and large, most of the citizens who complain that government doesn't listen to them have never said anything to the government to begin with. So that part I discount. But for companies that want to work with government, there are two things. If you are in a vendor relationship substantially, then you are subject to all the realities of that vendor relationship. Some of what you described is true even in the private sector market. Many of us have been vendors to other private sector companies, and the kind of runaround that you'll get in those things are not very different from what you'll get around in a government department. So I don't want to treat it like it's peculiar to government. What governments need, actually, is companies that are not giving them solutions simply because those happen to be the solutions that the companies come with. Governments will find it, like I'll give you an example. In the police now, some 6 months ago, they decided that they need an ambulance tracking and assistance service at the signals to be able to track ambulances and relieve them at the signals. The Home Department has even sanctioned 72 crores for this project. Now, I can imagine this project being done for 72,000 rupees, but I can't imagine what's in it for 72 crores. However, the persons who go and pitch ideas to the government, they essentially see government as a possible source of revenue. And therefore, they pitch solutions that maximize the revenue from what they have in hand. And that creates the problem, that you can't allow the tension between what is in the public interest and what is in your private interest to be determined or dominated by your own judgment of that thing. So by and large, what I do is I don't charge the government. It's the easiest thing in the world. There's no need for a bill. Even for the 3 years that I was advisor to the chief minister, I work for free. So it's just a little easier if you get the money out of the thing. But money is only one part of it. I think another model that's worth trying is what I would call try before you buy. In every other thing in the IT industry, in the software industry, there's a lot of try before you buy. And I think if we move to hosted solutions that government can try before they buy, number one, you would be able to access more governments simultaneously than having to deploy your resources in each department. Number two, governments would be able to try it out and see whether they like it. And many government departments need to try it out to actually understand what you're saying. No matter how well you communicate it, they can't sometimes understand it until they use it themselves. And third, you build a revenue model that is weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever it is. Anytime they don't like it, they stop using it. So in a way, I think you have to come up with a model that works well given government's difficulties. Government is always looking at contracting, cost reduction, accountability. It's much easier to say no in government than to say yes. So therefore, these problems come about. But one other model that has worked well for me is to say there is revenue in the private sector. There is public utilization of the product as well. Now, combine that to create capacity in government first. We'll look at revenue later. It's a choice at some level. Yeah. And many of the things that, another thing you can do, especially for your city, is you can build things free for your city and sell it elsewhere in the world. That's actually not a bad idea, because if you do that, both of your objectives get met simultaneously. Okay, thank you very much, and let's hope for the panelists.